Peace be upon you. Last episode, we explained how the theory of evolution contradicts Islam. We presented the different viewpoints that claim to reconcile evolution with Islam. One such claim comes from Dr. Adnan Ibrahim, who, in 2014, presented a series on the theory of evolution in which he promoted the theory with all its aspects, i.e., that organisms emerge from random changes and blind selection, without intention, which results in design flaws and useless vestigial organs. How was he able to persuade some Muslims to believe in this? How did this gradually lead them to disbelief, doubts, and confusion? This is what we will find out today, so stay tuned. Dr. Adnan Ibrahim starts his series with the claim that he wants people to understand the theory of evolution so they don't reject it outright, out of ignorance, fall behind Western science, and face ridicule. Accordingly, he told his viewers that the first part of his series would be a presentation of supporting evidence for the theory, while the second part would be a criticism and counter-arguments.
We want to rid ourselves of the stigma of ignorance, at least when we discuss this subject, evolution, whether we agree with it or not.
He gives you the impression that the supporting evidence he will present can be reconciled with Islam. So come, listen, and don't be afraid.
Don't be in a rush to find out my opinion on evolution. The theory may be correct, even from an Islamic standpoint. There could be no issues and no worries, Allah willing, all in good time.
So, you open your heart and listen attentively for a reconciliation between science and faith, only to find him assuring you that Allah's creatures came by chance and randomness, and that they have stupid design flaws, according to the great scientists. How? Forgive us, Allah. He tells you, be patient. We will reconcile this with Islam in our second series. But until then, I assure you that Allah has some role in the emergence of organisms.
Allah's method of creation is gradual development. Therefore, it is not evolution, but gradual development. Let's call it evolutionization. It is not progression, but promotion. Who develops? Allah. Who promotes? Allah.
The myth that creatures emerged by chance is considered ridiculous by any sane person. However, saying that Allah has a role in the process gives the myth some credibility and saves it from outright rejection. Some might say, I can see how this is possible. Others might say, maybe Allah created the first cell and left evolution to produce the different organisms from it. Maybe Allah directs evolution in a general direction. The insertion of the word Allah in this farce tempers the natural reaction of ridicule and outrage, as long as the process falls generally within Allah's preordination. Where is the problem? Adnan, therefore, thinks that
Allah's method of creation is gradual development.
Let's see how he describes this method.
When you read and delve into the theory of evolution, its philosophy, you will find it attractive, magical, and beautiful. Truly, it has cast its spell on me since I was a little boy. On the origin of species fascinated me. Why? It talks about continuity, about selection. True, it is a stupid selection, but with clever results. True, it is a stupid selection, but with clever results.
The question is, if someone told you that you use a stupid technique to do your job, would you accept that? So, what's the bottom line? Was the emergence of organisms by intent, Dr. Adnan? Let's see.
Is it gradual development? What is gradual development? Guided evolution. Truthfully, this is what I ultimately believe to put your mind at ease. This will explain things that evolution fails to explain. Thus, we conclude that this gradual development is truly Allah's way of creation. He intended to create organisms this way.
Thus, Allah intended to create organisms this way. So there is a divine intent. In contrast, let's hear his opinion on Allah's way of creation by natural selection, as he claims.
The selection process is, of course, blind. A tinkerer, a blind tinkerer. What does tinkering mean? Fixing, patching. In a previous episode, I mentioned that the analogy used most by evolutionists to explain how natural selection works is to compare it to a tinkerer. Natural selection is not a designer, my brothers. There is no design in natural selection. Therefore, the selection is indeed blind, surely blind. It is neither a rational power nor a conscious self. It has no principles, laws, or plans of operation. No, none of that.
If we and all creatures do come from the patching work of a blind tinkerer who doesn't know what he's doing, it should not surprise you to hear our friends say,
Therefore, there are flaws in creation. You will even find flaws in the human body and flaws in animals. You will say, forgive us, Allah. But there are flaws. Until now, nobody has proven that they are anything else. Imperfections, flaws, incomplete things, parts incorrectly placed.
nonetheless, he adds, to delude you into thinking that the myth does not contradict faith.
What is the problem if Allah chose to create all species from one another through natural selection? Absolutely no problem.
What's the problem? Ask the questioner. If you were told that your work method is stupid and blind, without design or plan of operation, leading to flaws, imperfections, and incorrectly placed parts, would you accept that? They attribute to Allah what they hate for themselves, while their tongues mouth a lie, that they will have the finest reward. How abhorrent is the meaning indicated by his words. Allah creates randomly, blindly, and purposelessly. Exalted is Allah above what they say. Surprisingly, dear viewers, this approach used by Adnan Ibrahim of attributing some unknown role for Allah in the emergence of organisms to make the myth of randomness and chance more acceptable is but a copy of the method used by Darwin previously. This use of conflicting statements is an imitation of Darwin's style. Peace and blessings be upon Allah's messenger, who said, "You will follow the ways of those before you." How did Darwin delude people into thinking that his myth did not contradict the belief in a creator? My search for mentions of creator in Darwin's On the Origin of Species found clear inconsistencies in the description of the creator's effects. Did Darwin maliciously intend to cause confusion, using an ebb and flow approach to slowly prepare people to accept his myth? Or was he truly confused and internally conflicted? Not our concern. What concerns us is demonstrating how the most ridiculous and stupid idea in history initially infiltrated hearts and minds under the guise of attributing some role for the creator until it was accepted by people, corrupting their mind and logic and leading them slowly towards disbelief. In the conclusion section of his book, On the Origin of Species, first edition, Darwin wrote, I should infer from analogy that probably all the organic beings which have ever lived on this earth have descended from one primordial form, into which life was first breathed. Into which life was first breathed. Who breathed it, Darwin? The Creator. Okay, why don't you explicitly state so? Fine, I'll add it for you to the appendix. Did he? See this statement from his publisher. The following additions and alterations prepared by the author, expressly for this edition, were received too late to be incorporated in their proper places. One of these additions was an amendment to the sentence, life was first breathed, to life was first breathed by the Creator. Darwin kept the phrase by the Creator in the later editions of his book. Thank you, sir. So, what did the Creator do next? That was it. His role ended there. What? Do you mean to say, Darwin, that the Creator did not create organisms intentionally and willingly? Definitely not. Oh, maybe you mean that the Creator, at least, had a general plan for the formation of organisms, i.e., he let chance produce changes, then let natural selection select, while he already knew what all this would ultimately lead to, right? According to Darwin, never. There never was any plan of creation, general proposition, or ultimate purpose for creation. So no one intended to produce organisms in this fashion? It all happened by chance? He says, yes. Wait a minute. Here is Darwin stating in the 1859 first edition of his book, we must suppose that there is a power always intently watching each slight accidental alteration. Who is this power? He must mean the Creator. After 2 years, during which minds were allowed to absorb the absurd idea of organisms forming by chance, as long as it was all happening under the attentive watch of the Creator, Darwin changed the phrase in the 1861 edition to, we must suppose that there is a power. Then, in parenthesis, he wrote, natural selection, always intently watching each slight accidental alteration. Then, in the 1869 edition, he clearly stated, "We must suppose that there is a power, represented by natural selection, or the survival of the fittest, always intently watching each slight alteration. So the Creator has nothing to do with creation, according to Darwin." Hold on. Darwin did not deny that the Creator created nature. Perhaps he meant that nature acts on Allah's behalf to fulfill his intention and wisdom in creation. Definitely not. Instead, Darwin stated that many naturalists believe that nature reveals the plan of the Creator, while he considers that such beliefs add nothing to our knowledge. Here's an example of Darwin's insistence, at any cost, that nothing was ever created purposely. Alfred Wallace was one of the first people to propose natural selection. Darwin considered Wallace a partner in producing the theory of evolution. Wallace wrote an article on some properties and structures in humans that were unlikely to have appeared through natural selection. The article focused on the brain and stated that there seemed to be a power that guided evolution in specific directions for special ends. He used the phrase higher intelligence, which guided evolution to nobler ends. When Wallace published his article, Darwin became furious and scribbled a large "no" on the margin of the article, using exclamation points for emphasis. He wrote Wallace to express his fear that Wallace had completely murdered their joint child, meaning the theory of evolution. As if he was saying to Wallace, "Whose guidance? Whose ends? Whose intelligence? Don't you get it, Wallace? This is what I want to deny completely. My entire theory is intended to limit the role of the Creator and deny creationism. With your reference to a Creator's involvement, you attack the theory at its foundation and nullify its objectives." Okay, Darwin, you rejected Wallace's statement. Do you have an alternative explanation for the brain that Wallace focused on? Of course not. In fact, Darwin himself expressed his doubts about the mind and its reliability. With me, the horrid doubt always arises whether the convictions of a man's mind, which has been developed from the minds of the lower animals, are of any value or at all trustworthy. So, Darwin himself realized that his myth ultimately discredits the mind and leads to a vicious cycle of circular reasoning, because we have to trust a mind that's nothing more than processes of a brain that came by chance, simply because this mind tells us to believe it. This dilemma makes everything that Darwin wrote completely worthless, because it comes from the delusions of a discredited mind. Regardless, Darwin insists that the brain was not purposely created. So Darwin, in conclusion, is the role of the Creator limited to the first cell? Even this was later questioned by Darwin. In his correspondence, he states that the first organism may have spontaneously emerged in a warm pond. So, for Darwin, there is no breather of life, no breathed life, or anything. As if Darwin wanted to gradually loosen the divine grip on his perception of the universe. Exalted is Allah above all that. So, Darwin played on words and took gradual steps, all the while repeating some calming phrases to reassure the believers in the Creator that he was on their side. He was one of them because he admits to some role for the Creator. Compare all that to the phrases of his student Adnan Ibrahim, who considers random changes and blind selection the method of the Creator, then goes on to call this method stupid. He says that Allah intended to create organisms, then denies any intention behind creation and asserts that it is nothing but blind tinkering. The issue is clear, then Darwin opposes belief in the Creator. He is not an objective scientist or anything of the sort. No, do not assume bad intentions. Darwin is only saying this to praise the Creator and glorify Him above imperfection and flaws. How? Let's watch the student first, then the teacher.
Now, the creationist cannot explain why these birds have wings yet cannot fly. Would Allah, blessed and exalted be He, create something in vain? Would He create something without a function, something unimportant, without a purpose?
Allah forbid. Hence, you have to acknowledge that Allah, the Creator, exalted be He, did not create these birds. We refuted the useless wings joke in detail in our episode, The Cocktail, and made those who repeat it sound like a broken record and wish they could bury their heads in the sand if they were truly fair. We also responded to many other claims made by Adnan Ibrahim. Let's go through what our friend did. He listed examples of so-called errors in creation and presented them as unquestionable facts. He then led you to believe that the only way to exalt Allah above committing these errors is by denying His involvement in creation and attributing these flaws to randomness and chance. Similarly, Darwin presented himself as someone who venerates the Creator and exalts Him above any likeness to His creation, when he said, "It is scarcely possible to avoid comparing the eye to the telescope." We know that this instrument, the telescope, has been perfected by the long-continued efforts of the highest human intelligence, and we naturally infer that the eye has been formed by a somewhat analogous process. But may not this inference be presumptuous? Have we any right to assume that the Creator works by intellectual powers like those of man? How dare you presume this about the Creator? Shame on you. The Creator is too great to create in this way. If man manufactures telescopes with intent, and will then the Creator must create using randomness and blind selection over millions of years. His creation is also full of flaws, design defects, and vestigial organs. He never intends to create anything. He has nothing to do with creation whatsoever. This is what you need to believe to avoid being presumptuous towards the Creator, according to Darwin, under the guise of exalting Allah above committing errors. Adnan Ibrahim is emboldened to further mock Allah's creation. He quotes the rubbish of pseudoscience by those who criticize Allah's creation while claiming that he is not criticizing Allah's creation. On the contrary, he is criticizing the results of randomness, blindness, and chance, which is Allah's way of creation. Make what you will of that. Remember our previous talk on the eye and its brilliant design, and how some professors, who are proponents of the myth, wrote papers dismissing claims of flaws in the design of the eye. They themselves mocked the claim that the photoreceptors would have been placed at the front of the eye had it been designed. Our friend is not concerned about any of this. He only cares about what his friends, who mock Allah's creation, say.
The human eye, which many non-specialists believe, is a marvel of ingenuity and design. Impressive, exciting, astonishing. They believe that. The specialists, however, believe something totally different.
Meaning, you poor guy, you believe the eye is great because you are not a specialist. Come listen to what the specialists have to say.
Whether it's about evolution or otherwise, this is science itself, and it has been known since the 19th century. Take the German physicist Hermann von Helmholtz, known as a physicist. Unfortunately, most people don't know that. He was a biological scientist and a psychologist. His contributions to both sciences far exceed his contributions in physics. He was an encyclopedic scientist, an encyclopedia in physics, but more so in biology and psychology.
This, invariably, is Adnan Ibrahim's style. Whenever he wants to quote a stupid statement from any pseudoscience priest, he must promote and glorify him until you submit and humble yourself to hear what this giant has to say, even while you can clearly see the stupidity of his statements. What did this great encyclopedic scientist say?
He has a famous quote that evolutionists rely upon and celebrate as it supports their cause of ridiculing the design of the eye, its ingenuity, and wonderful creation. Helmholtz says, "If an optician sent it, the eye, to me as an instrument, I would send it back with reproaches for the carelessness of his work, saying, 'Take it back. What is this? You call this an instrument? Even I can make a better lens and camera.'" The atheist evolutionists go even further. I'm not saying they exaggerate, but they boldly and simply say, this is not just a flawed design, it's an absolutely stupid design. You call this design? Then it's an utterly stupid design.
So their statements are not exaggerations, lies, or outright deceit. No, it is simply boldness. They are bold enough to speak the truth, according to Adnan Ibrahim. Take Dawkins, for example, whose lies and falsifications of science to deny the Creator and convince people that he is an illusion. We have repeatedly exposed. Adnan Ibrahim describes him as
a scholar, whether you agree with him or not. He has the passion of a scholar, the mindset of a scholar. He worships science, rejoices in science, celebrates science, truly exceptional.
So, because Dawkins is a scientist, you should believe him when he says, concerning the giraffe's recurrent laryngeal nerve.
Why does this nerve take such a long detour, which seems to be a stupid loop? Why does it do so?
Do not get angry or doubt the man's intentions. In the same context, he says,
Very long, and then returning back to the throat, there is no God but Allah.
to him it is a stupid detour, but there is no God but Allah. Glory be to Allah. Moreover, on the spine he says,
Robin Williams says that this is not by design. It is an evolutionary path, a stupid tinkering.
Similarly, in the episode Wakey Wakey, we discussed his claims about the so-called vestigial pelvic bones in whales.
They are utterly useless by absolute consensus among biologists.
As discussed, biologists have explained in detail how crucial these bones were for whale reproduction more than 130 years ago. So, their only use to whales is to keep their species from extinction.
It is not acceptable in science to refer to a century-old book to critique evolution. Science requires you to continuously stay up to date. If you rely solely upon even a 4- or 5-year-old book, you may become a joke in scientific circles. To speak about science, you must always keep up to date. You cannot nap, then pick up where you left off.
Yet, Adnan Ibrahim hunts for any statement by a pseudoscience fool, which describes creation as stupid and cites such claims as science, even though these claims have been invalidated through detailed scientific research carried out by evolutionists themselves, as we have shown time and again. He never forgets to start his episodes with,
In the name of the most gracious, the most merciful, praise be to Allah. Peace and prayers be upon the Prophet, his family, companions, and followers. Glory be to you. Our knowledge is but from you, Allah, the all-knowing, the wise. O Allah, teach us what is of benefit. Benefit us from what you teach us and increase us in knowledge. My loved ones, for Allah's sake, may Allah's peace, mercy, and blessings be upon you.
So, rest assured, all this ridicule and mockery of Allah's creation is a lesson in faith which can be reconciled with faith in Allah. Wait, be patient. In the next series, by the will of Allah, the Exalted. Exalted above what exactly, if He is not exalted above imperfections, as you claim? We've previously shown how any sane person can deduce Allah's wisdom from His creation, even if one cannot see the wisdom in a certain detail, because the countless signs and proofs of Allah's wisdom are sufficient. But for Adnan Ibrahim, no. Whoever thinks thus is a creationist whose views explain nothing. The enlightened one is the evolutionist, who searches for anything whose function he does not know and uses it to find fault with Allah's creation.
Here the creationist finds the issue puzzling and difficult to explain. Shut up then. He would say, Allah has wisdom in everything. He has a loose explanatory model. He says everything but explains nothing. Yes, because he does not understand why. The evolutionist, however, knows why. It is a long story. If you would like to know its details, there are many books available, including Dawkins' book, The Greatest Show on Earth.
The book written by the atheist, Dawkins, The Greatest Show on Earth, more like the greatest sham on earth, as we showed previously, is but a pile of fabrications aimed at denying the Creator. The esteemed Adnan Ibrahim is referring you to this book. Contrast this with his ridicule of the scholars of religion who mistakenly claimed that the theory of evolution is extinct.
Do not allow yourselves to listen to liars. These religious scholars who talk about things they don't know, sometimes in the name of science.
Adnan Ibrahim wants you to believe that atheists have strong, indisputable evidence, such as Lenski's experiment. So again, he must dazzle you with the giants, so that you swallow whatever they say.
Lenski's experiment, wow. More than 70 or 80 pages of extremely complex scientific, technical language, tables, diagrams, numbers, and mathematical equations. Elaborate and expert work.
Okay, what about that paper?
Maybe it is possible, we still don't know, mutations may arise in bacteria, allowing it to metabolize compounds other than glucose. If, for example, one or multiple complex mutations occur, it is very complex. And this is exactly what creationists deny.
Creationists are, of course, the believers in the Creator who say that living organisms are complex with precisely designed, integrated components that could not have come by chance.
This is exactly what creationists deny. They say this cannot happen through mutations or by chance. Impossible. There must be a designer behind it, Allah, because the probability of its occurrence, here they start calculating, is 1 over 10 to the power 150 or 300. This is impossible. It's equal to nil.
To clarify, we believe that the probability of its occurrence is 0, nothing more. We have gone through this earlier.
Well, if it did actually happen in nature, what would you do? Unfortunately, it does happen, as evolutionists have proven.
So, unfortunately, it does happen as evolutionists have proven. Unfortunately, we creationists are in trouble. We thought a creator was necessary for all this, but now evolutionists have proven through science that chance is enough and there is no need for the creator.
It will happen. It happens. Imagine, 2 or 3 mutations can accumulate, each useless on its own. However, if one mutation follows another randomly, and a third mutation occurs, as a result, the organism evolves in a very interesting way, acquiring a new advantage which makes it more efficient in some aspects. Does this actually happen? Unfortunately, it does happen. In this experiment, you will see how it happened. This experiment is one of the strongest proofs for atheists, evolutionist atheists specifically, who believe that chance can produce complexity and things that cannot be imagined by the creationist believers. It does happen. It happens, and we've seen it happen and documented that it does happen.
Okay, so atheists have robust evidence that chance can create without the need for a creator.
We will see some dangerous things, very dangerous, and we'll see if we have ways to respond to them. How would one respond? We cannot reject the experiment. This experiment is scientifically robust, irrefutable.
So we seem to be in very serious trouble, which threatens our faith. Atheists have an irrefutable piece of evidence. They are the people of science. Let us see if we, the believers in the Creator, can come up with a response to save face and faith.
Interpretation of the experiment. The experiment may be 100% accurate, but the error may be in the interpretation of what happened, in the explanation of what happened. There is some marginal room for interpretation. We will discuss this in the second series.
Therefore, the atheists have evidence that is not only powerful, but also devastating.
Obviously, Dawkins is very proud of this and considers it devastatingly proof. It is, however, open for discussion, as we will see in the second series, Allah willing.
Obviously, the second series has not yet come out. Adnan Ibrahim has been spreading his doubts in pseudoscience through more than 30 episodes, starting in 2014, on the premise that we will understand their argument first, then respond to it and try to reconcile Islam and evolution. Several years have passed, yet the anticipated response has not come. Lenski's experiment, which Adnan Ibrahim refers to, was covered in detail in a separate episode. We explained what happened to the bacteria using Lenski's own paper in Nature. We also proved, from Lenski's paper, that what happened had absolutely nothing to do with chance. Instead, it was an orderly, precise, amazing process. We showed how Lenski and his team intentionally played with words using the term exaptation to deny the intentionality of the process. They presented the results scientifically, but distorted their interpretation. We simplified the results in diagrams so any layman could understand. We showed, to any sane person, that this experiment is great evidence for creation by Allah, who perfects everything and the fine-tuning in every corner of the universe, from the smallest to the largest of organisms. We also showed that this experiment, like everything in the universe, presents an embarrassing predicament for atheists, not for us believers, as Adnan Ibrahim portrays. What's painful is that before starting this series on the myth, I had a conversation with a doctor who told me that he was a fan of Adnan Ibrahim and his ideas. I wanted to give him an example of the falsification, so I brought up this experiment and Lenski's paper in Nature, then asked him, "Do you see this promoter?" The doctor went silent. I said, "The promoter, you know it, right?" He said, "Honestly, no." Of course, dear viewers, the promoter and its functions are taught in the foundational courses of biology and biochemistry during the first years of pharmacology, biology, and medical studies. It is considered an ABC of science. Our friend here is a doctor at our most prestigious hospital. Yet, he is unfamiliar with the term promoter and is fooled by Adnan Ibrahim's claims. Then people say, doctors at prestigious hospitals believe in evolution. It is extremely painful to see people who are completely clueless about such fields objecting, after each of our episodes, to creationist sheikhs like myself, as they were taught, delving into these sciences, even though those commentators know and understand nothing in these fields. Yet their minds are stuffed with pseudoscience myths, making them immune to comprehension and learning. They are ignorant, yet unaware of their ignorance. So Adnan Ibrahim spread his doubts in more than 30 episodes, justifying this by saying,
I hope, in quotes, for the dear brothers and sisters to understand that thus far, as I told you, I'm playing the role of a supporter of evolution, a believer in evolution. I want to fully assume the role as if I were a hardcore evolutionist, to inform and present, with full scientific integrity and neutrality, the evolutionists' proofs and evidence. Therefore, don't rush me with questions like, as an evolutionist, how do you explain so-and-so in Allah's book? What do you say about Adam? This is nonsense. It's unscientific.
As he put it, he assumed the role of an evolutionist, spread all their lies as science, ridiculed their opposition, planted the seeds of doubt in his followers' hearts, then abandoned them. Now, the month of Ramadan comes upon a young man who's convinced of what Adnan Ibrahim says. For the first time, after this conviction, the deluded young man begins to recite the Qur'an and reads, "Can the one who creates be equal to those who do not? Will you not then be mindful? And do they not ever reflect on camels, how they were created?" The deceived young man thinks, Lord, what is there to praise? It is randomness and blind selection over billions of years. What is so great about such a creation? Does randomness create?
Does it happen? Unfortunately, it does. We've seen it happen and documented that it does happen.
The deluded young man comes to the ayah. Those you call on beside Allah could not create a fly, even if they combined all their forces, and says to himself, true, but give it millions of years and flies will form through random mutations, without a creator.
Does it happen? Unfortunately, it does. Over millions of years, very small changes occur and accumulate until they become great, dramatic changes after millions of years.
The deceived one reads, there are signs on earth for those with sure faith, and also in your own selves. Will you not then see? And says to himself, signs of what? Everything on earth is the result of the accumulation of random events. As for myself, there are flaws in my design and vestigial organs.
You would say, forgive us, Allah, but there are flaws and, until now, they haven't been proven to be anything else. Imperfection, flaws, incomplete things, parts incorrectly placed.
Allah, the Almighty in His written signs, the Qur'an, refers to His visible signs, the universe and life, to signify His greatness and capability. However, our friend is convinced that the visible signs have flaws.
They haven't been proven to be anything else. Imperfection, flaws, incomplete things, parts incorrectly placed.
And that this is science, reported by scientists. Each of them
a great scientist. His research is fascinating, strong, and original. We have here a very great, famous scientist.
For the deluded, the signs on the perfection in creation, which should boost faith, now become scientifically problematic because they refer to a perfected creation, which is not really perfected. Have you not seen those who meet Allah's favors with ingratitude and lead their own people to their doom? With such a mindset, the deluded one recites ayahs such as, indeed, we have created everything in due measure. With Him, everything is determined with precision, who has perfected everything He created. He has created everything, ordaining it precisely. That is, the design of Allah, who has perfected everything. As for the earth, we spread it out and placed upon it firm mountains, and caused everything to grow there in perfect balance. So blessed is Allah, the best of creators. The deceived one starts asking himself, how has He perfected everything He created? What about the many scientific examples of poor design? Where is the perfect balance? when there are vestigial organs? How can I reinterpret all these verses to make them conform to scientific facts? Our deceived friend could have reached the opposite conclusion and said, the theory of evolution is therefore invalid, but it was drilled in his mind, over months, that evolution is an undeniable fact, with clear evidence, so religious texts must be subjugated to it, not the other way around. This coincides with an internal, psychological, and cultural defeat and embarrassment about his Islamic identity, and everything related to it. Our friend goes on to ask, why should I call an atheist to believe in Allah? What would I ask him to contemplate to acquire faith in Allah? Creation? The atheist can simply respond with, randomness and chance did all this. Our friend starts thinking about leaving Islam, but wait a minute. He remembers that Allah still has some role because matter must have a creator. The basic elements, that randomness and blind selection acted upon, must have a creator. The theory of evolution does not explain the emergence of these elements from nothing. It does not take long for our friend to discover that there are scientists who have solved the mystery of the emergence of the universe and matter from nothing, without the need for a creator, like Hawking. Hawking, who is...
Hawking is a genius, an extraordinary scientist. Who are we compared to Aristotle or Hawking? We are nothing. Compared to them, we are but dwarfs in front of giants.
Wait. Hawking is an atheist who says that the universe created itself. Do I not have the right to belittle Hawking and his like and call them out as arrogant pseudoscience missionaries? Excuse me, who do you think you are?
Open what? Research what? You idiot! Go earn a living. You are hungry. You are naked. You are sick. You can't even govern yourself. Yet here you are threatening the world? What have you contributed to the world? You brought skinning, slaughtering, and outbursts while they gave us the microphone that I'm speaking into, the YouTube on which I'll post the sermon, the camera that's recording, these lights and ventilation that we all enjoy. Literally everything is from them.
This is Adnan Ibrahim's method, ingraining psychological defeat into the hearts of Muslims and making them feel inferior to the educated, intelligent Western master. By the way, contemporary Muslim scientists are missing in Adnan Ibrahim's series. They are extinct.
The great Muslim minds are gone. Unfortunately, they are extinct.
Extinct. If you'd like to get to meet some of these extinct people who are still living among us, we advise you to visit the webpage of our brothers, Al-Bahithun Al-Muslimun, Muslim researchers, titled Islam and Science in Modern Times. Also, this page, titled Muslim Future Scholars, and this book titled Achievements of Muslims in the Modern Era. Take a look and feel pride in your fellow Muslims. You'll also feel pained by how ignorant Muslims are about them and their achievements. Of course, Adnan Ibrahim, in praising Hawking, did not say that he was right to disbelieve in the Creator. Nevertheless, he elevated his status in our deluded friend's eyes and turned the existence of Allah into a metaphysical, philosophical, elusive issue, perhaps implying that Hawking may be excused as he tried and failed, as did Darwin.
He is a credible, pure, simple, candid, straightforward, unique, not a manipulative person. As I said, a fascinating character. If he had been presented with credible, convincing evidence that Allah exists, that he was the creator, the designer, he would have shouted it from the rooftops and abandoned his theory. But the facts at his disposal perplexed him, so he said, I do not know.
So, evidence for the existence of Allah may not be convincing to a frank, straightforward, honest person. Atheists, on the other hand, have strong evidence according to Adnan Ibrahim. As a result of all this, the logical principles of the Adnan Ibrahim follower are completely demolished. His self-esteem is defeated, and his mind becomes deformed to the extent that he begins to accept the theory that the universe does not need a creator. Rather, it created itself. Hence, our friend no longer has any reason to hold on to his belief in a creator. Or, at the very least, Islam becomes a mere possibility. The existence of Allah, a possibility, and other points of view deserve respect. If you have not watched our previous episodes, please refer to them for a detailed scientific response to much of what Adnan Ibrahim quotes from the pseudoscience missionaries and passes off as science. This is the story of many young people who let the pseudoscience missionaries and their Arab disciples mislead them through logical fallacies, psychological manipulations, and pseudoscience. It started with altering the terminology and claiming that Darwin's myth is science, followed by grafting the tree of faith with Darwin's tree, under the slogan, "We intended nothing but goodwill and reconciliation." We do not want our youth to leave Islam if they sense a contradiction between science and faith. Good. So, what is your solution? Blasphemy in Allah's names and attributes, distorting their original meanings, denying that Allah is the creator, the originator, the fashioner, the overseer over his creation, his encompassing knowledge of his creation, and his perfecting his creation. And all, the most beautiful names belong to Allah, so call on him by them, and leave the company of those who blaspheme his names. That is, they distort the names from what they were intended for, and leave the company of those who blaspheme his names. They will be requited for what they used to do. Thus, distorting the names and attributes of Allah gradually leads to denying the existence of Allah. The Muslim who recites the Book of Allah Almighty with understanding, glorification, and freedom from psychological defeat knows that every page of the Qur'an denies this distorted insinuation of some unknown role for Allah, as claimed by Adnan Ibrahim and his teacher Darwin. The Qur'an is full of ayahs describing Allah's continuous sustenance for all his creation, his ordination of their destinies, and his providence for them. The Qur'an also shows creation's continuous need for an all-knowing, wise, self-subsisting Lord. Have they not seen the birds above them, spreading and folding their wings? None holds them up except the most compassionate. Indeed, Allah alone keeps the heavens and the earth from falling apart. Allah's self-subsistence, together with creation's absolute need for him, is also a mental imperative, as we explained in the episode, Majesty in All Allah's Creation. While doubting Allah's creationism is a step towards doubting his sovereignty and absolute right to legislate for his servants. Unquestionably, his is the creation and the command. Doubting that Allah created creation is a step towards doubting that he alone commands and prohibits glory be to him. This is what Adnan Ibrahim does when he promotes Western democracy as a step above the Rashidun Caliphate, the Prophet's just successors, and promotes secularism. He does all this, while at the same time making you feel that he is attributing some role to Allah. Therefore, we say to those affected by Adnan Ibrahim's doubts, for a long time, you've suffered from those who speak without knowledge. Rightfully so. However, you poor soul, you sought a cure from someone who took advantage of your pain, poisoned your medicine, and dealt you the death blow, out of the frying pan into the fire. Is Dr. Adnan Ibrahim aware of what he is doing? Is what he does premeditated? Or does Satan exploit people with diseases in their hearts and use them as his puppets, while they think they are doing good? The answer is not important because the result is the same. His attacks on the Ummah's religious values and the Prophet's companions, using fabricated evidence, as shown by our brothers on the Mukafahat Ash-Shubuhat channel, make it truly difficult to find any excuse for him. Regardless, our goal is to show how Satan enters into people's souls. We say to them, do not follow Satan's footsteps, so that we can see how the Qur'an fortifies us against taking these steps and protects from these fallacies, and see together the truth of Allah's words. We have revealed to you the book as an explanation of all things, a guide, a mercy, and good news for those who submit. That is what we will see, Allah willing, after reviewing other examples of so-called reconciliations between Islam and pseudoscience myths. So stay tuned. Peace and mercy of Allah be upon you.